Helps if you turn up the mic, doesn't it? Too many things going on here. What can I say? Anyway, thanks for joining me tonight. My name is Lee Love, and this is Photo Mentor TV. And we do this every Friday night at 9 p.m., assuming that I can push all the right buttons and all the stuff goes out to where it's supposed to go to. The purpose of this show is, again, we do this every Friday night, 9 p.m. on Friday. Did I say every night? Every Friday night at 9 p.m. A little, things are not, as usual, technical problems. What can I say? But every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time. So if you're in one of those time zones or somewhere in between, you can catch us, I hope. And the purpose of this show is to answer questions and really to give you kind of straight answers on what's going on photography-wise. And what started all of this, quite honestly, is just a little bit of my frustration in seeing people demean or discount new photographers that were asking Facebook questions or in group forums or whatever. And I just felt that there needed to be a place for somebody to help new photographers and educate, encourage, and mentor them. And that's what this show is all about. So anyway, you can also catch us on, the show is streamed every Friday on Facebook and YouTube. And you can leave comments or questions. You can ask questions on either one of those. I think I'm having some problems with the Facebook group, which is typical. For some reason, I have no problem getting live questions from YouTube, so that works great. But Facebook seems to be a little more of a challenge. But anyway, you can get to either one of those live streams by going, or the replays, by going to facebook.photomentor.tv or youtube.photomentor.tv. And if you like what we're doing here, I really would appreciate your support. And by that, I just mean if you like the page, like the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It'd be nice if we could get a few extra subscribers over there so I could make some additional changes. But anyway, so I'm glad you're here regardless. I appreciate it. And it's really something I was thinking about today that I really appreciate each and every one of you guys. It's terrific. I know I get a lot of questions, of course. And most of them will start out with, hey, Lee, I got this question. I'm sorry. I hate to bother you. And my attitude is just the opposite. My attitude is, are you kidding? Your questions are like gold to me because it keeps me on track. By listening to your questions, I remember what things I should be teaching you and educating you on. Because I've been doing this so long, quite frankly, that I forget that people don't know all these things, the basics, and, they don't know what RGB versus sRGB is or those kinds of things, or what's a crop sensor camera versus a full-frame camera. They forget that, and so I really appreciate your questions, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate each and every one of you guys. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Tonight is the first Friday of the month, so if you guys know what that is, that means we are doing our photo reviews, which is great. Always have a good time doing that. It's one of my favorite things to do. And so first Friday of the month, what we do, the reviews are anonymous so that you don't have to be embarrassed. I'm not gonna call you out anyway, but you can, they're anonymous, so anybody can, if you're a new photographer, I don't want you to be embarrassed to submit your photos. Any camera, any experience is fine. Even, like I said, a smartphone. If you're just using an iPhone or something, hey, that's a camera, right? So, and that's a great way to learn, in my opinion. The images are reviewed on, based on composition, technical, and subject matter. And also, if you want to submit your photos, you can do that at review.photomentor.tv, and you can submit your photos that way. And again, I love looking at everybody's work, so anytime you want to do that, that'd be great. So anyway, so again, you don't have to wait till the first of the month to do it. You can submit them anytime, and I'll queue them up, and we'll add them to the show. So that's what we're going to do tonight. One of the things we're going to do tonight. We also have some questions that you guys have submitted, and so we're going to answer those as well. I think that is everything I had on the list. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but we'll catch up as we go. If you, by the way, I should mention that we also have a Facebook group. If you are a person that enjoys helping, and I mean that specifically, I don't want this group is relatively small, and it's kept that way on purpose because I want people that are there to help encourage and other people. I'm not looking at people that are know-it-alls and just want to show off. If you're interested in helping other photographers, then check out photomentor.tv/join. Put a little bit of information in there about yourself, and then go over to the Facebook page and submit. I'll actually get notified anyway if you just fill this form out, but you don't have to go over there. But if you also go over there and submit that form, then and go to the group and hit join or request to join, and I'll get an alert that way as well. Anyway, love to have you over there if you're interested in learning and not being demeaned or berated. I'm sorry, I just really can't stand when I go to these groups and I see people ask a simple question and people send them a YouTube link or a Google link or something like read the manual. It's like, really? This is a beginner group and that's the way you treat people? Anyway, just irritates me. So, pet peeve of mine if you haven't noticed that. All right, so let's get to some questions and we'll jump into the reviews for tonight. The first question comes from Brianna, and Brianna says, I take photos on my phone, which is great, but I really like to get serious about photography, and I was wondering what's the best camera to buy. Well, that's a pretty broad question, and of course, can't really answer it specifically, but I do want to make a couple of comments about that. First of all, I encourage you, if you have a phone, take pictures with it. Take images with it. And here's why. It may have some limitations, of course, but it's a great way to learn composition. So composition is going to be the framing and the framing and the lighting and things like that. It's a great way to learn to see because, and what I love about it is because you're not encumbered by the technology. You really are just, all you have to do is just take the picture. The camera's going to do the rest. And again, I know it doesn't have a lot of lenses and all, but that's not the point. The point is learning to see images is much more important than whether the lens or the ISO or whatever that may be that you're worried about. Looking to see the image is a great place to start, and it's really where I teach photography is. When I teach people, it's learning to see first. We'll worry about the camera and the exposure triangle and all that stuff third, actually. So anyway, so that's a great question. So there's I'll give you a couple quick answers there, Brianna. A couple of cameras you could look at are the Nikon D3500, really nice entry-level camera, interchangeable lenses, very, very popular. The other camera is the Canon T7i or T7. That's also right in the same price range. Again, good camera. DSLR, a lot of support out there, a lot of interchangeable lenses, and so if you need help on it, there's a lot of places to get that. So that would be one of the places that I would suggest that you look. Sorry, let me bring this up here in case we have any questions. Okay, so the next one is from Mina, and Mina says, can you give me any tips for photographing an extended family? Run. No. Hire an assistant. There's some things. Photographing groups are very challenging, even if you're an experienced photographer. So there's a couple things that you're going to want to work on or make sure that you have. And again, I was somewhat serious about having an assistant. Assistant could be a family member or something to kind of corral them, line them up, and that type of thing. But there are a couple of tips that I can give you on how to set this up. First thing is, a lot of mistakes new photographers make is they want to blur that background. So they're shooting on the fastest aperture, or the widest aperture 1.8 or something like that. You got to be very careful about that because the depth of field is so shallow, meaning the amount of space that's in focus. And so therefore, you'll get people in the front of the group that are in focus and the people in the back will be soft. And so that's a problem. The second thing is, remember, you got a frame there you got to put them in. So sometimes you have to use depth to get everybody in, because you can't, if you have a large family or a large group, you can't spread them out too far. So you got to put them together. Also, have them turn, obviously, by sideways and looking this way. That'll give them a little more room, slim them up a little bit, and also you can get people closer. The third thing I tell people is, look at me. If you can't see my eyes or you can't see the front of this camera, then I can't see you. Because sometimes they'll think they're in the picture, but they're not. There's somebody's head's in front of them or something like that. So make sure you instruct them to do that. And the fourth thing is just it's like herding cats, I'm telling you. So they're going to goof around, they're going to give you all the sign, they're going to do everything they can to just, and you kind of have to be a little bit firm, I got to tell you. Some of the best photographers I know, some friends of mine, Donna, for example, she's really good at this. She's very gentle, but man, she's like, okay, line up, do this, and she's been doing it long enough that she's very good at corralling these people. I love working with her because I know that we're going to get good images out of group shots. So anyway, I mean, there's a lot of other things I could tell you, but those are the kind of some high points that you want to look at that are going to give you a good, and this, again, it works for families, portraits, corporate events, that type of thing, where you, especially corporate events can sometimes be difficult because, you know, you might have some people that are not necessarily want to be doing what they're doing there. So anyway, so hopefully that helps. Let's see. Brenda says, I recently did a shoot and they asked if I could send her all of the unedited pictures. Is this a common thing? It's, Brenda, it's common for them to ask, but it's very uncommon for you to do. In fact, the answer is no. Just do not release the rest of your images, or your and I wouldn't release any unedited images, but I certainly wouldn't release pictures to them to edit on their own. And here's a couple reasons for this. First of all, your photos are your own copyrighted, personal, you know, corporate, whatever you want to call it, image and material. So just because they hired you doesn't mean they own those images. You own those images, and therefore that's your artwork. That's your representation. You want to, at some point, as you get more experience, you want to get hired for your vision, for the way you see. You don't want people to hire you because you have a nice camera. And this is kind of the comment. This comment makes it sound like that's what they did. They hired you. Oh, you got a nice camera. We take some pictures. Just give us the raw images, and then we'll edit them ourselves. No, that's not the way it works. The analogy I often use is that when you buy an album, I guess they don't make albums anymore. Sorry, I'm showing my age. When you download a song, okay, do you be able to go to the artist and go, okay, hey, can I get the raw track so I can mix my own song? No. The artist puts out what they want you to hear, the way they want you to hear it. They may not think it's finished. They may always want to work on it, but it's kind of basically sealed, done, and that's the product. You want your photography to be the same way. So again, another analogy is a book. You don't buy a book and then say, hey, this is really great. Do you have all your rough drafts? I'd like to look through those as well and see what you were thinking. No. You get the book, that's it, it's final manuscript, it's edited, done. It's the same thing with your images. So you want your work to represent your vision, not somebody else's, and by letting them edit them, you're basically giving that away. So think about it this way. Let's say you're getting started, you're like, okay, it's no big deal, but what about a year from now? Do you want someone to see those pictures hanging in somebody's home or whatever that they've edited or they've done something to and go, oh, who took that? And they go, oh, Brenda did. And they, you know, they're like, oh, they say to themselves, well, that's awful. I'd never hire her. So you want to keep control over your own work. So very nicely, very professionally say, I'm sorry, I don't do that. You know, is there some, but the last thing I'll tell you is when I hear a question like this, it tells me there's something missing. There's something they're not getting. Why are they asking that question? There's always something else going on there. And generally, what I'm hearing read between the lines is, you shot something that it's not in this edit, or I don't like these. Do you have anything else that I might like better? So you need to dig in and ask that question. Oh, is there something that you don't see here that you were expecting? That would be one way of putting it. And so you want to ask them, because you want to ask them in a nice way, because you want to find out. But at the same time, you don't want them to get the raw images. You don't want to hand those out. You don't want them editing. You're the photographer. If they want to get their own images and edit them, then shoot the pictures themselves. That's the way I look at it. So anyway, hope that helps. Maybe it doesn't, but it's definitely a no-no in my book. I'd never do it. I just like, why hire me? If you don't want my work, you don't like the way I'm, then hire somebody else. Okay. So Katie says, this was an interesting question. I thought this was kind of ironic when it came in. How do you respond professionally when a client asks your age? It's not really a photography question, but I thought it was appropriate to kind of answer. Well, again, first of all, it's certainly, Katie, it's a little more, and you can argue with this, but I don't care. It's certainly more sensitive for a woman for some reason, and women generally. And I would use that as a joke. I'd say, I'd make light of it. I'd say, oh, come on, you know better than to ask a woman her age, and I would leave it at that and then see what happens. If that's not satisfactory, then I would say something like, well, how old do you think I am? All right? And then when they give you an answer, go, oh, okay, that's interesting. Thanks. Thanks, or oh, really? And just don't answer the question. It's not that it's not appropriate. I mean, I guess some people could say it's inappropriate, but what difference does it make? What I think they're probably, from looking at this, I thought what they were maybe getting at was your age. If you look young, and they may be going, oh wow, how old are you? Thinking they may generally be interested in curiosity. Wow, you're really good, and you've only been doing this for how many years? That kind of thing. So it's hard to say. So it depends on how sensitive you are about it, and if you think you're too young, then you could say something like, a lot older than I look. Or if you're going the other way around, you could say, oh, I'm a lot younger than I look, however you wanted it. But just, it's up to you how you feel about, your age, and if you're sensitive about it. But, let's face it, people make judgments on your age. Even the older you are, the younger you are. It doesn't matter what the age is. They're going to look at you and kind of size you up and go, oh, wow, that guy's this old, or this woman's this old. And so they may say, oh, they're too young, or they're thinking they're too old. So just because I have trouble with Instagram doesn't mean I'm too old, by the way. It's just confusing to me. Anyway, I shouldn't even say that. You guys are going to think I'm a old fart. Okay. Anyway. All right, so this is a good one. I love this one here. I just bought a Sigma 150 to 500. I think they meant 600, actually. And I'm dying to hold this concrete block of lens without dying. Or how do you hold this concrete? So, Emily, let me tell you, that is not a heavy lens. It's not that big. I would have loved to have a lens that light. In fact, when I picked it up, I was really shocked at how light it is. Compared to the lenses that we used to carry around or still carry around. So, for example, if you look at this is the lens that she's talking about, and I looked it up just to kind of because I was curious about it myself. So this lens, the 150 to 600, both this is the Sigma, but I think the Tameron's about in the same space. Is let's see, it's 4.07 pounds, I think. 4.03 pounds, 4-pound basically lens. So you're like, oh, wow, that's not heavy at all. So let me show you another lens. This lens is the one that I used to own. This is the 400 millimeter 2.8. This is the one you see on the side lens. I used to shoot sports and I was a photojournalist, and this is the lens I used primarily for that. It was a beautiful lens. I really hated to sell it, but I just wasn't using it anymore when I started moving into more advertising work. But this lens is a gorgeous lens. Now, again, the Sigma is a 5.6 to 6.3 aperture, but it's the widest opening. This lens is a 2.8, so granted it's a bigger lens, a bigger amount of glass, but this lens is 8.3 pounds, so it's, you know, twice the weight of the Sigma. So believe me, it is not, the Sigma is not heavy. And the lens I have right now I also have the Nikon 200 millimeter. This is a beautiful piece of glass, and it's only a 200 millimeter. It is an f2, so it's a really fast lens. It's just gorgeous. I just can't, I don't use it that much, but when I do, I just forget how beautiful it is, the images it makes. That lens is 6.38 pounds. So you can see that it's really relative about how big these lenses are and how heavy they are. So the 150 to 600, to get 600 millimeter lens that's 4 pounds is amazing nowadays, the materials that they're using. But anyway, I get what the problem is. So I'm going to say two things here. One is going to be appropriate, one's not. The one that's not appropriate is, hey, you know, put on your big girl panties and go out there and do it. I mean, this is just, it's photography. You're either going to be a photographer or you're not. So you just got to step up and handle it. I mean, otherwise, go do something else, quite frankly. I don't mean to be rude, but I don't understand why people don't understand that these are the tools we use, and sometimes they're difficult. Like, look, when I come home sometimes from a big shoot, a couple days shoot, my back's killing me. You know, I coined the term, it's a 3-a-leave shoot, right? Okay, so I got to take 3-a-leave to make my back pain go away. But that's the job. So I either got to find another job or do something else. So anyway, that's the non-conformist, or the, and it may be inappropriate to some people, answer. The real answer, or the other answer, is use a monopod. I should have grabbed one here. I have a real nice heavy-duty monopod, and I would encourage you to get a heavy-duty one, because you want to be able to hold it over your shoulder, not have it slip or fall. And in some places you can't use a tripod, for example. Here in DC, you can't use them on the steps of these memorials, or these like the Washington or the Lincoln Memorial, things like that, because of and there's a lot of places you can't use them because of the safety issue. Because if people had to exit the building or something, the tripod would be in the way. But they will allow you to use a monopod. So a monopod is what you want to do with the lens you're talking about. I assume you're doing wildlife or anyway, and so if that's what you're going to be doing, you got to have the gear to do it. You need the longest lens you can afford, and you need to have a steady hand on it. So I should have demonstrated, but what I do, let's see if I can show. So I'll hold the monopod like this, and then I'll take this hand, and I'll have this hand on the camera, and I'll take my front hand, should be doing it this way so you can see a little better. I'll take my front hand, and I will rest it on the front of the lens, and I'll hold it down there, and I'll kind of keep it steady. And that keeps the lens a little more steady, not moving around, instead of just holding it and trying to keep, because you got this monopod which can move in all kinds of directions, so you want to kind of stabilize it. Anyway, hope that helps. And I hope you're not offended. If you are, next question. Okay. Let's see here. So the next one is from Austin. And Austin says, I'm trying to get some decent RGB and easy portable lights. Do you have any recommendations? Well, I don't know what you're shooting, Austin, but keep in mind that LED lights or RGB lights are typically LED. They all are. I use them for video, but I don't use them for still photography. For still photography, I still recommend strobes. And the reason is a couple of reasons. Number one, LEDs still don't put out a lot of light. Now, there are some models that I have, like I'm using here, that are have a lot of light to them. They're what they call COB. I should have brought up a picture of them for you. But it's a big chip. The whole LED is one chip. It's called a COB, meaning chip on board, which is a dumb name because it doesn't make sense to me. But it's a single chip. Those have more output power than the LED ones that you see with all the different rows of LEDs. And all the RGBs, maybe they're starting to come up with a couple of them now, but for the most part, all the RGBs are the LED type, the single LEDs. And so some of those LEDs typically are going to change color, and some may not, depending on how they're designed. So therefore, they don't have a lot of output, is what I'm trying to get at. So when you don't have a lot of light, that means you have to use a higher ISO and a slower shutter speed. It's just like having a lot of ambient light that you can direct. So strobe light, on the other hand, puts out a burst of power really quickly, and it's much, much more powerful. So number one, it freezes the action. Number two, you can use a smaller aperture and not have to turn up your ISO. There are some LEDs you can get that you can use, but again, to make them portable, you said portable, then that means battery power, that means the price goes up. I mean, most battery-powered LEDs use big batteries, and they're not that cheap. I think the Aperture 120D Mark IIs are around $700-800, and they have a 300D, which is even more powerful. That's close to $1,000. So I didn't get the impression that that was the kind of light you were looking for. So I would recommend either speed lights, you know, on-camera lights you can move off-camera, or studio lights that are battery powered. You're going to get a lot more for your money if you do that, and they're a lot more flexible. I could go into a lot more about why that works as far as shutter speed and stuff like that, but that would be my recommendation. Okay. Sorry here, let me just check real quick. For some reason, the Facebook did not have, not getting the questions coming in on my screen. Okay. All right, let's see. So Megan asked, this is a silly question, which again are my favorite kind of questions. I really appreciate this. Thank you. But can I use a Sigma 85mm lens on my Nikon D70-500? Yes, it depends. So here's where the confusion comes in. Sigma and Tamron are third-party lens manufacturers. So what they do is they make one lens, essentially, with multiple mounts, or different mounts, not multiple mounts, different mounts. So you can buy a Sigma 85 for a Nikon. You can buy a Sigma 85 for a Canon. You can buy a Sigma 85 for a Panasonic and Leica L mount. You can buy I think there's available for that. I know they make L mount lenses, and they also, you can get an 85mm one for a Sigma or a Sony mount. So it's the same basic lens. The electronics are a little different, you know, to be able to talk to the right protocol of the camera and the focusing system, but the lens is essentially the same. So the trick is you just have to buy the Sigma 85 for the Nikon mount, and you're good to go. And the Sigma 85, by the way, is a fantastic lens. It's a 1.4, really, really sharp. And the 85 is one of my favorite portrait lenses, by the way. It's my go-to portrait lens. But the Sigmas are really nice. And one of the things about the Sigmas you'll find is they have a little bit better, a little more punchier contrast in color. They're not quite, they're just amazing lenses. And so if that, definitely something I'd recommend. That helps, Megan. Okay, so Brooks says, what do you use to protect your camera from water? Okay, again, very broad question, but let me give you some answers to kind of narrow it down for you. First of all, most of the modern cameras, especially when you start getting into the more semi-professional cameras, so like we'll talk about the Nikon line. So there's the D3500, the D5600. Those are the consumer brands. Then you move into the 7000 series. There's the 7500, I think, right now. I think that's the current model, 7800 maybe. I forget. Anyway, those are the prosumer models. So I think it's the 7500 is the current one. Those are the prosumer. They're a little bigger, a little better built, and they have a little more weather sealing. If you look around the side, they'll have some gaskets and stuff like that. Sorry, I wasn't planning on doing this. So, so if you look, this is the D810. Now it's one of their pro level cameras, but all of the pieces, all the things around here to get to the connectors, have all rubber sealed systems on it. You could use this thing. It doesn't. A lot of the newer ones also don't have pop-up flashes, and the reason is, again, to make it more weather resistant. But this thing, you could shoot this thing in the. There's all rubber gaskets around where the cards go, things like that. So, and that's also where the difference, by the way, comes in. A lot of people say, well, why would I get, let's say, the 50? Why would I get the 50 millimeter 1.4 over the 50 millimeter 1.8? Let's say the Nikon. The Nikon 50 millimeter 1.8 is about $199, $216, I think. The 50 1.4 is around $549, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So people are like, well, that's just, you know, it's 1.8 to 1.4. It's not that big a difference. It's not, well, the optics is part of it, but the biggest difference is you'll find that the 1.4 is a professional lens, and therefore it is weather sealed, and it's meant to be more resistant to rain and moisture and things like that, and that's what you're paying for. Same thing with the camera. So to kind of get to your question, because I know that's originally what you really were asking per se, is that depends on the kind of water you're talking about. So for example, when I was shooting sports, I had a cover that went over my gear, and also I've used it when doing magazine work. Because sometimes you're shooting outdoors, and you know, like if in front of the Supreme Court or something, you don't have any choice. All right. Actually, I'm doing a video. I have a video for that. I'm going to work on. I'm going to show you guys me out in the middle of the rain and sleet, covering an event, but that's a whole nother story. Anyway, the point is, in that situation, you can just cover your equipment with these outdoor covers, and the way they work is they go around the lens to seal it. There's a cover. There's a place where your hands go into it, so you can still run the controls. It's clear on the back, so you can still see the controls and see the screen. Those are what a lot of sports photographers would use. If you're covering football, football doesn't stop because of rain, and so you still have to be out there shooting, and therefore that's what those. So if it's that kind of weather, those work great. There's also, you can get some temporary ones that are real nice. They're clear. They're around $8, $8 or $9. There's 2 of them in a package. Same kind of thing. They're disposable, or you can reuse them. And that would be great for light rain, caught in the rain, that kind of stuff. But if you're talking about now rafting, going down the river with water, you need to kind of water seal it. That's a whole nother ball game. And so I wasn't quite sure what you were asking there, but if that's what you want to do, they do have these really heavy duty, I won't call them a Ziploc bag, but almost like that, a super heavy duty vinyl that you can put your camera in and seal it. And number one, you can just seal it up, and so there's no moisture getting in there. And some of them even have the ability to shoot with that on there. They're made for your camera. So, and then of course, if you're going diving, then there's underwater housings which you could use, which are totally waterproof, of course. And the problem is those things cost as much as the camera, so they're pretty expensive, but they're pretty phenomenal. It's amazing how the mechanics of it work. Anyway, Brooke, sorry. Hope that answered your question. I don't know if it did or not, but that's, if depending on the kind of weather protection you need. My guess is you just want some from rain and some mist and things like that. And so, a Think Tank makes one that's really, really nice. It's a little more expensive. Pelican makes one that's not as very expensive, and it would be a good one to get. I think it's around $40 or something like that. That would be one, and it's so it'd be something to look at. Anyway, okay. So Derek says best in studio portrait lens for a Canon EOS RP. Someone said I need the 35 and the 85. Well, yes and no. Half of that's right. Again, as I said before, the 85 is my go-to lens. Beautiful portrait lens, be perfect for the RP. I absolutely would recommend the 85. The 35 is too wide in my opinion, even for full length. Because what most people don't realize is that, you know, you want the longest lens possible for portraits. Now, it says a portrait lens, so I'm assuming you're doing portraits, okay? The longer the lens, the more compression the lens gives you, and therefore the more flattering it is on the facial. Sorry about that. Hang on. Unless he's correct, my friend Jeff there, unless he's correcting me, is the you want to compress the facial features, and so therefore, you know, you want the longest lens possible. So that's where why I would recommend the 85. If you need to shoot full length, then you might want to go with the 50 millimeter, 50 add as well. So I wouldn't go with the 35, but if I were going to get two lenses, I get the 50 and the 85 for that camera. But the 85 would be my first choice. So, okay. Let's see here. Next question. Okay, can anyone recommend photo editing software? Can you recommend a good photo editing solution? So, Justin, there's a couple of choices there. I know it's a very commonly asked question. First of all, if you want to get started, I would look for the manufacturer. Nikon, Canon, and I believe Sony all make free software that you could use to do editing of your RAW files or JPEGs coming out of your camera. And frankly, they're going to do the best conversion from RAW to JPEG because they're the camera manufacturer. They know what that file format looks like. The next step would be, if you want, it depends on whether you're talking, there's two categories of editing software that I would tell you about. One is photo manipulation, and what I mean by that is the Photoshop, that type of thing. We're really doing what I call heavy-duty, serious photo manipulation. If that's the case, then Photoshop, or there's another program which I use, I'm going to use here as well, I use both, called Affinity Photo. It's what I use for the reviews. I'll show you that in a minute when we start getting into the reviews here in a few seconds. Both of those are really great, but they're extensive, not expensive, extensive. They'll do a lot. The Affinity Photo is my favorite. It's $49. It's an amazing piece of software. It'll do 99% of everything Photoshop does, exactly like Photoshop does, for a lot less money. So if you're doing photo manipulation, that's what I would recommend. If you're doing more about photo editing, and what I mean to that about that is, okay, you shot a wedding, or you've got some portraits, and you got 20, 30, 40 pictures you need to edit, and you want to edit all of those, then something like Adobe Lightroom or Skylum's Luminar would be my choice there. And what those programs let you do is they'll let you look and say, okay, I want to change the color temperature or something on these 10 images. You can do the first one, and then you can say, I want to apply that to all 10 images, and then it will do that. Where Photoshop, on the other hand, doesn't do that. Photoshop lets you edit one picture at a time. You save it. There's kind of some ways to do it in what's called Bridge, but that's a whole nother, that's not really the way it works. So Lightroom and Luminar would be the ones that most people, I think, would use. And if you're doing photo manipulation, then Lightroom, or excuse me, then Adobe Photoshop or Affinity Photo would be my two choices there. There's a bunch of others out there, but again, start with the manufacturer's software if you want. And so I think that is our last question. All right, so let's get into, again, I'm going to remind you guys, we do photo reviews on every first Friday of the month, which is tonight, of course. And so I've got some, we don't have a lot of submissions, but we have some, and we're going to go over those. Let me bring this up here. And okay, see if I've got this right. Okay, so here's the first photo that we're going to look at tonight. Now, two things. Number one, as I said before, if you guys aren't, or three things actually. I've discovered that this monitor does not look as, I don't know how it's going to look on your screen, but it may look differently. So don't judge too much on the technical criteria, because what you're seeing may not be the same thing I'm seeing. I noticed a color shift and some things like that. I'm going to have to work on that to do a better job for the next month. But anyway, the second thing is, what is the second thing? I forgot. Anyway, so the point is, it doesn't matter what the image is. I encourage you to submit it no matter how long you... Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. These are all anonymous. So in other words, I don't actually use the real initials, and I don't use their real name or anything like that. So I've made up the initial for this one. This is MJ, and MJ's been shooting for 3 to 4 years. And I like to have the experience level in there, so it gives me some idea of, you know, how long you've been shooting and that type of thing. So the third thing is, this is not fair, because I love cats. I've had many cats. We have cats now. And so cat pictures are great. And so it's, you know, should I say no more cat pictures, but I love them so much. So what, you know, I can't not do that. Anyway, so let's look at this. So again, I look at these on the composition factor, the technical merit, and the subject matter, not my own personal preference. So other than I do like cat pictures. Okay, so a couple things. Number one, it's a great picture. I mean, it's really nice. It looks good. It's a good composition. It's not actually, there are some issues with composition, but technically it's good. It's sharp. The composition is where I would make some improvements. So it's not too bad in that at least it has not looking off frame. Sometimes people will do something like this, where they put the subject over here and close to the frame, and they're looking right into the edge of the frame. And what that does is it makes it's a visual language issue. And so when you have somebody next to the edge of the frame and they're looking into the frame, it creates tension. Now, I'm not the one saying that. It's just the way it is. The human brain works. So there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to create. If you're looking to create that tension, or to demonstrate, to give you an example, wow, there's something else happening off screen, then that's why you would have them look closer to the edge of the frame. Okay. So go back to this. So anyway, so I would, the only thing that I think maybe is could use a little more room down below. It's a little bit centered, which is okay, but it'd be nice if it was just a little looser and there was a little more of the neck here, so that it kind of fell in a little more to the rule of thirds a little bit, that type of thing. But technically it looks good. It's sharp. You know, you could kind of, maybe if you wanted, and this is a personal aesthetic issue, you might want to change the contrast a little bit. Again, you can't really tell on your monitor. I think on your monitor it's going to look a little more contrasty than it does on mine. But it's not a bad picture. But I would, again, I think you need a little more room at the bottom here, so it doesn't, so it looks a little more balanced. That would just be my suggestion on composition. Story-wise, not much of a story there. I mean, there's no mystery. It's a cat looking off the screen, and that's pretty much about it. So I would say that's, you know, that's about all I can say on that. Again, I like the picture because it's a cute cat. But other than that, not much I can say about it. Okay, let's look at the next. So MJ, that's MJ's picture, and so the next one. I like this picture a lot personally, but I also think it works photographically, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the toning I'm not real sure about. Okay, I don't know if that works or not for me, but that's again an aesthetic choice. So this was submitted by GD. It's just getting started. They've been shooting a year or less, I believe. And so this is pretty good. So here's why this picture works. Not a personal preference, why I think it works photographically. First of all, it meets the number one criteria, which is it's telling a story. There's interest. Okay, this is the mistake I think many photographers make, is they look at how sharp the picture is, the ISO, the noise. They're all focused on the technical aspect, and they totally forget the story and what they're seeing. So what I'm seeing here in this picture, number one, you got this cute little girl standing on her tiptoes, which is kind of cool. Okay, that's I mean, that right there alone is a part of the picture, in my opinion. And so, because it shows she's really interested. Okay, there's a cat out here who looks very nonchalant, like, okay, whatever, you can't get to me, but she's just really interested in this cat. And so there's a whole story going on here, with this little girl and the cat, and her wanting to get out probably and play with the cat would be my choice, with my idea of what's going on here. But the point is, it leaves it open for us to fill in the gap. We can interpret however we want, but there's definitely more going on in this picture. Now, technically, there could be some things. I'm sure a lot of people would say, oh, you could darken the sky, or you could make it bluer, you could do this, you could do that. Like I said, I'm not sure about the toning. If it were me, I might make it a little differently, but that's the personal choice, not the aesthetics, or not the technical aspects of it, composition-wise. The mom looking out here, I assume it's the mom looking out here, watching her, which is really cool. If I were going to say anything about the picture, I'm wondering, it would be kind of interesting to see if there was just her in there. Of course, you can't get the mom out of there, really. But I'm wondering if something like that makes it a little more powerful. Although it can work either way, quite frankly. But it definitely works as far as telling the story, and looking at what's going on, and making it more, and making it an interesting photo. So you could maybe come in here. Got to change this. I forgot about the contrast, about the ratio. Okay, here we go. I think this will do it. Yeah. So the other thing you could do is maybe crop it down a little more at the top, so it's not quite so loose. So and again, the purpose for doing that is it draws attention to where you want the viewer to look. So something like that might be just a subtle thing. It's small, but it helps draw the attention again to where you want what the most important subject in the frame is. And that's what we're trying to do here in photography, is draw the viewer to where we want them to look, not wander all over the frame going, what's this, what's that, is that important, is this important? Technically, you could maybe do some burning in here, darken this area. Again, maybe darken this in here. Once again, the whole purpose is to draw your attention to the subject, and of course the subjects are the little girl and the cat. That's the main. So anyway, I think this is, GD, I think you're onto something here with this. I think it's just and I know who this is, and I've seen their improvement in their work over the last 6 months or so. It's been really great, and I'm encouraging you to keep going. But this is a terrific image. This is another image that GD submitted. Again, it's got all the elements. It's composed well. Technically, it's shot perfectly. The lighting is perfect on it, and the subject and the story is also excellent. Again, probably a dad or a granddad, a daughter, a granddaughter, and the love and the affection there, and the humor is it just speaks to you. So there's nothing you can really add to, I don't think, to this image. I mean, you could always pick it apart, but I don't think it's necessary. I think it works just the way it is. And so, I mean, you could go in, lighten the eyes, do some stuff like that. But that's not the most important thing. I think the most important thing is, does it have the story? Does it convey the emotion? And I'd say, yes, it definitely does that. And that will outweigh any other issue. Now, the composition could be the next thing. But generally speaking, if the image does, my analogy I tell people is, look, if you photograph an apple on a table it could be perfectly lit, and it could be super, super sharp, and it just be beautiful. But there's no story. But if you take that same apple, you cut it open, you lay it out, you put a knife, maybe put some cheese, something, you stage it, all of a sudden it takes on a whole new meaning. Now there's a story behind it. What's going on there? Is there a person's hand in there? Is there bread? Is there cracker? I mean, something else in the, now that starts to tell a story about a meal, about something going on, as opposed to just an apple sitting there that's perfectly sharp and well lit. Doesn't have much of a story. So I think that story element is 75% of the image most of the time. So anyway, that's the deal on that one. Okay, so next one so these are, the next three were not submitted, but they were somebody I was working with, and I asked, this is done by Amanda Comprone. Amanda, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I apologize. This is and again, these images look better on my monitor than they do on the output. They're not quite as contrasty. I tried to adjust them the best I could. But she took a friend out into the snow to do some kind of sample pictures, and I thought these came out pretty well. And I'll show you my favorite here in a minute. But the point is, what's great about, and where she's going with this, is she's trying to tell a story. She's trying to learn to tell a story, and that's what this is all about. So this picture's okay. I mean, you know, there's nothing that great about it. It maybe, again, I'm a big, you know, I'm trying to figure out what's the most important thing in the frame. So maybe something like this could even, I don't know, maybe work. It depends on this one. But then this other one, it's again another one, great, kind of trying to tell a story. I love the dress, blue dress. The blue and the snow, I think, work because of the color. There's a, you know, they work on the color wheel. There are not a lot of, they tend to, a lot of people would say maybe red or something like that, but these are complementary colors. And so the contrast in the white and the blue are really, really powerful. But this is the one I think that works the best. And again, the reason is the dress, the couch, or the love seat, I guess would be technically what it is. I don't know. The snow, the way it's framed, you could even probably put more contrast in here. I told her that this looks great. You could go in and dodge and burn the dress, make it more intense looking if you wanted. But the point is, she's telling a story, or she's attempting to tell a story here. And I think that's what really makes this work. I think it's a beautiful image, technically. And I think from a compositions, it also works. So these are the kind of things that I encourage you guys to think about, and that is more along the lines of storytelling and less about the issue of the technical aspect. Now look, I understand that the technical aspects of photography are intimidating. I get that. But you know, any of the pictures we've looked at, right? I didn't give you any aperture settings or shutter speeds or ISO numbers. Why? It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Does the picture work or it doesn't work? Does the picture convey emotion? Does it tell a story or doesn't it? The settings are irrelevant as far as that's concerned. Now, you can use those settings to help improve or enhance the story. In other words, if you're going to throw the background out, create depth, that type of thing. But that's not the meaning of the story. An image works or doesn't work based on the content and the subject. So I encourage you, focus on the story first, learning to see these images, and worry about the technical second. So when I teach photography, there's a four-step process I use. It's seeing, learning to see, telling or learning to tell a story, see the story, exposure, meaning the technical aspects, the lighting, the camera, and then the processing. Those four steps are the things I believe require you to be successful as a photographer. But most people talk about photography in the case, they'll start with the camera first. I see it over and over. Oh, you got to shoot on manual. Oh, you got to, you know, You need to be, you need to, learn the exposure triangle. Yes, those things are important, and you do need to get to there eventually. But you can have a perfectly technically exposed picture and a lousy subject or no story at all, and then what's the point? Like I said with the apple. So there's more to it than that, and that's why I start with this learning to see first. I also am not I'll tell you right up front, I'm not a believer in learning to shoot on manual right away. I think that is old school. I think that's a held over from people that were when they were learning to shoot film. When I shot film, then you didn't have a choice. You shot everything manual. Aperture, shutter speed, ASA as it was called then. In other words, the film had a locked on. It was 25, 100, 400 ASA, and that was it. You couldn't change it. Okay? The manual focus, manual camera. So it made sense to learn the exposure triangle first. So you can have some success, right? So you can have some pictures that are usable. Plus, you only had 24 or 36 of them, so you wanted to make sure, you had a couple of them that were good in there, your keeper ratio. But nowadays, we've got cameras that have more power than the first space capsule that went around the Earth, and people are still trying to teach you to shoot on manual. Don't get me wrong, there is a place and time to shoot on manual. But for the most part, it's not the time and place to shoot on manual when you're getting started. Anyway, I know that goes against the grain. I know some people will disagree with me. That's okay. But my method works, and I've taught hundreds and hundreds of people photography, and my goal is to get you successful faster. Then learn that stuff. All it'll come in time. But if you don't get some success, if you don't have some wins, if your keeper ratio is awful, then guess what happens? You lose confidence, you get overwhelmed, and you get discouraged, and then you want to quit. So I believe it's important to have some success up front, learn to see, learn to tell a story, and then worry about the other stuff third, actually. Anyway, don't mean to go off on that. So I think that is about it for this week. Again, I'll remind you guys, if you want to participate in the photo reviews, I encourage you to do that. Be sure and send those in. We do it, again, you don't have to wait, but we do this the first Friday of every month. And you can go to review.photomentor.tv, and just a couple of questions there about how long you've been shooting. I just want to know so I can apply that to the criteria, and then upload your image. And I'd love to see you do that. Let's see here. So finally, I'd like to ask if you appreciate this or you find this useful, please like the Facebook page. Appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as we continue on this thing, on our journey. And share this information. Share the link for the videos to other people that help other photographers. And, I hope you guys hang out, and I hope this has been useful. I enjoy, again, working with everybody. It's nice to help people and see them grow. Again, like Amanda and the other, and a GD, I think I use initials is what I came up with. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this, and thanks very much. And listen, see you next week.